Have you ever been around turkeys? I'm talking about the gobble gobble type, the kind that you end up with on your dinner table around Thanksgiving time. Some of you are living in the city and have always lived in the city and you haven't been around any farm critters. I grew up on a farm, and as I grew up, we had dogs and cats, and neighbors had some guineas. Dad raised cattle and had milk cows and had some hogs. I was in 4-H club, so I had some rabbits. 4-H club, they had sheep and pigs and things of that nature. But we never had any turkeys. Grew up and got out on my own. I had some cage birds in the house. I had some finch and I had some parakeets, and Granny always had a canary. She loved canaries. She loved to hear them sing. I got out on my own and I had a parrot for a while, and I had guinea pigs, and I went to raising some dogs. I had bulldogs, English bulldogs, like the Winston Churchill kind of dogs. And I had other various dogs throughout the years. I had German Shepherds and Labradors and Australian Shepherds. I had a Weimaraner for a while. Those are an interesting experience. And then when I got back out on the farm, I decided that I wanted to raise a whole bunch of rare heritage livestock. I wanted to give back. There was a lot of animals I had discovered, breeds of animals that were becoming pretty much extinct. You know, that certain breeds of cattle and certain breeds of sheep and certain breeds of poultry. Well, after I'd moved out from home and got married, I went out to the farm to visit my daddy, and he had a turkey. And that turkey, he called her Turkey Lurkey. It was a hen turkey, and she liked to sit up on the porch like a dog. In the lane, she'd chase the car down the lane like a dog would chase a car. And if you standing out there talking and you had shoes on that had shoelaces on them, she'd untie your shoes while you're standing there talking. She's ornery. And I thought, turkeys probably make a pretty decent pet. It does. Well, I decided that I would move back out there on the farm and I'd get into some rare heritage livestock. And I had all kinds of things. I had sheep and goats, and I had an alpaca. I had all kinds of poultry. I had a warm room in the barn where I had some rabbits, and I had all kinds of, well, I guess you'd call them kind of pet store critters. I raised some rats and mice and stuff for snake food, and I had hamsters and gerbils and duprozzies and all kinds of little varmints out there in the warm room. And tree collection, I got me a couple bourbon red turkeys, and some of you may have seen the video that I have up on a turkey wedding that we had out at the farm, and had a whole slew of people. It was like 150 people showed up to see us get a couple turkeys married off to each other. I called them Fred and Ethel. And they never raised any chicks. And after Fred and Ethel went to the great beyond, I decided I'd like to get back into some turkeys again and see if I couldn't maybe raise some for a change. So I got to reading up on them, see, okay, what makes this tick? And I found out that if you was going to raise any turkey chicks, you had to have a male that was very aggressive. Also, the male was, the less likely he was to produce any chicks. And I found that kind of interesting. So, researching the various breeds of rare heritage turkeys. And there was a breed of them that really caught my eye, and they were called lavender turkeys. And their feathers was like almost a lavender color. It was a real pretty turkey, and I'd really like to have me some of them, so I shopped around until I finally found somebody that was raising them. Because, you're dealing in rare heritage livestock. It ain't like just everybody's got them. Shopping, and you generally pay a pretty premium price to get your breeding stock. And so I got me a trio. I got 2 hens and brought them home, had them a place all fixed up out in the coop, and went to taking care of them, seeing if I couldn't raise some chicks. And I found that it was better if you just pulled the eggs, put them in an incubator, and hatch them out that way, rather than to let nature have its course there. Maybe the eggs would freeze or get stepped on and broke, or some kind of an issue there with them. So when I got some eggs, I'd bring them in, put them in the incubator, and hatch them out that way. But the funniest part of that whole thing was, since it had to be an aggressive in order to get your eggs all fertilized and everything, he tended to be awful mean. Nobody wanted to fool with them turkeys. If I got a farmhand, and tell them to go out and feed the turkeys, it wasn't long before they was back in saying, I ain't messing with them birds, because that male turkey, he would hurt you. Nobody could feed them but me, and I had to have a special way of going about feeding them. I had a big water tank in there that I'd fill up, and if you've ever seen a poultry tank, the top of it comes off, and in the tank it's a gravity feeder. You put the top back on, and then as they drink the water out of the bottom tray, the water goes down into the tray, keeps it filled. Well, in order for me to get the lid off of that, the water in it, from getting beat to death by that turkey, I mean, he would flog the daylights out of you. They got spurs on their feet too, buddy, and they'll lay them into you and draw blood. Well, in order for me to get the top off of that tank, it was almost a circus act. He's something else. He'd be beating the daylights out of me, and me trying to get the lid off that tank and get water in it. If I wasn't careful, he'd flip over I had a big old 5-gallon bucket I'd carry water out there in. He'd flip the bucket over and spill all the water, make a big mess, flog me. In order to feed him, I had to have a metal trash can lid that I held in front of me like a gladiator shield. And I'd have to go in there with that in front of me, and as he'd fly up to try to latch onto me and spur me with them feet, I'd have to grab him by the neck. Then I'd lay the shield down and grab the feed bucket and dump the feed in the trough. And then I'd throw the empty feed bucket back out the door. I'd back out, and as I'm getting ready to grab the door handle to close the door, I'd let go of his neck and slip out that door and get it closed before he come flying back at me again to lay into me. So I had this down to a science to keep that bird off of me. I took some awful hard licks though until I figured out how to control him. I'm sure it was the funniest thing anybody ever seen, is watching me try to feed them turkeys. He was a pretty thing, but man, would he hurt you. Wow, he would. It was always an adventure trying to deal with the animals out there on the farm. You had to have a science down to it. If you really wanted to have some fun, you'd wait till some of the city folks come up, and then you put them in the pen with the turkeys. Watch the feathers fly.